Hey, what's going on, guys? Alec OR. Welcome back to another video where today I am watching one of Mark Roberts' videos, and let's just say I haven't seen this one, and this one really pulled my interest. So without further ado, let's get into it.
What is the scientifically proven best way to skip a rock? This is kind of hard to figure out because every rock you throw is a little different. Not to mention your throwing motion might accidentally vary in between throws. And so to solve that, I built a perfect rock skipping robot with... This is Lake Kavanaugh. It's located here in Washington State. Then we created a base for stability. And this was my first pigeon thrower and tweaking rock. I'm back in 15 years, so took and machined an adapter plate, and then made some custom throwing arms from wood. Then we created a base for stability, and now all that was left was to challenge my nieces and nephews to a rock skipping contest. Only I might have neglected to tell them about my creation. Actually, forget this. You guys ready?
3, 2, 1.
So it actually wasn't that impressive right out of the gate, but that was intentional because for this video, I wanted to pull back the curtain on some secrets about the engineering design process. There are 4 steps I follow for any big project I've ever built on this channel or in real life. The first is research. I will go online and look at any published papers, watch any videos on the topic, and then talk via Skype or email with any experts I can find. That usually gives me a rough idea of where to start, and so the next step is to build a prototype. A good prototype is cheap and easy to reconfigure, so you could try a lot of different things. And then step 3 is to do a sensitivity analysis with a prototype. That means we try lots of different combinations of settings to see what actually matters and what doesn't. And only at that point are we ready to take what we've learned and move to step 4, which is building the final version. So often people want to jump straight to step 4, which usually won't work, but it's almost worse if it does, because you have no confidence that you're close to the optimal design. For the rock skipping robot, I'd already done steps 1 and 2, so we all sat down and brainstormed about step 3, and all the things we could tweak to find the right conditions for the perfect skip. Eventually we came up with 4 different things to test, but before we did that, I was told the robot needed to look a lot cooler.
So what they're doing is designing it, like creating a version of it. Skipper! Isn't that the guy from, what's that one movie? Madagascar? And there's, what is it? Oh yeah, that's the name that they use for the submarine captain, dude, guy, person, thing. Yeah. Let's continue on.
Next was finding the right arm angle. This changes the angle of the path of the rock relative to the water. So, with mission clearly accomplished, here are the 4 variables we decided to test. The first was wrist angle of the robot. This will change the angle of the rock relative to the water, as you can see here. So should it be perfectly flat, or really steep, or something in between? Next was finding the right arm angle. This changes the angle of the path of the rock relative to the water. So is this better, or is this better, or something in between? The last 2 variables had to do with the rocks, but since every rock is going to be unique, we needed a way to control this, so we decided to make our own rocks out of unfired clay. That allowed us to make lots of samples and to see how many more skips you would get if you varied either the diameter or the thickness. And if you've ever seen a primitive technology video, you know clay is just dirt and water. This is great because it means it has a similar density to a rock, and if you dry it in the sun, it's hard like a rock, but then it only takes about 30 minutes to totally dissolve away once you put it in the water. Then we set up a testing plan, and for each throw we would change only...
I didn't know that. 30 minutes for a makeshift clay to dissolve or to break down. That is really cool. I'm not gonna lie about this. This is like I can't even explain how cool that is. Let's get back.
only one thing and then count the number of skips. That way, if we suddenly saw a huge improvement, we know it would be from the thing that we just changed. That's why having a robot is way better than using a human, because it allows you to independently change one thing at a time. And so as you can imagine, we had a lot of skips that look like this, or this, or this. But then we started to narrow in on some key parameters.
Wait, did someone get hit?
Or this. But then or this. But then
I think someone got hit, but I'm not too sure.
Then we started to narrow in on some key parameters, and then they started to look more like this.
Three, and still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can't even continue counting after like a 4 or 5.
And I'm not exactly sure how you count all those little skips at the end, but depending on that, I would think we got some throws well into the 60s.
I mean, that's still force being pushed up onto the rock. It doesn't matter if it's a lot or a little bit. All that matters is the tiny bit of force that's being pushed up onto the rock or the clay that it's made. And also the you know what I'm talking about.
And so in the end, we discovered there are 4 steps to achieving the perfect rock skip. The first is that you want the angle of your rock relative to the water to be about 20 degrees. This is the optimal angle to allow the rock to sort of crash into the water and then to make a ramp, and then to use its forward momentum to ride up that ramp and shoot back up out of the water. And that's the exact physics that explains why rocks skip. Next, you want the path of your rock relative to the water surface to be about 20 degrees. This means you sort of need to start the throw high, which gives you some potential energy to put into the system. In the same way, a ball bounced from this height will bounce more times than a ball bounced from here. Now, before making this video, I assumed you wanted to throw as low and parallel to the water as possible, like this. But actually, the ideal throw looks something more like this. Here's the guy who holds the world record in rock skipping, throwing from a bridge to demonstrate you don't need a super low throw to the water to have it skip. The third key is to flick the rock with your wrist as much as possible to get it spinning. As you know, spinning things are more stable. This is because they have angular momentum and resist having it changed according to Newton's first law. So spinning, and therefore stability, is important because it will maintain that magic 20-degree ramp angle with the water, as you can see here. If it's not spinning enough, it will rotate over and then sink. And finally, rock choice is important, but not in the way I originally thought. Primarily, it just needs to be flat on the bottom to create that ramp, but shape and diameter don't matter nearly as much. The heavier the better because you put more energy into the system, but not so big that you can't reach the terminal velocity of your arm by the time you release the rock. This is especially important for kids. They'll see much more success with small, lightweight rocks. And I should also mention that we looped back and checked a couple of papers we discovered about rock skipping, and for the most part, it matched really closely to what we discovered ourselves. And so, armed with our new knowledge, I put all the nieces and nephews through Rock Skip Boot Camp to get the perfect technique into their muscle memories. And while it started a bit rough, they all eventually graduated. And the clay discs tended to be a little more forgiving, so we trained with those first and then graduated to actual rocks, and the principles translated perfectly. And so after a hard workout, like all true performance athletes, we carb loaded. So there you have it.
I mean, that looks good. Like right now it's 9:53 a.m. and that, just looking at it, is just making myself hungry. But this is practically the end of the video. Anyway guys, this was such a learning experience for me. It is unexplainable. And, yeah. My name is Alec, or Zombie Killer, and goodbye.